Hi everyone, welcome back to our HistoPH family, where forgotten Filipino history finally comes alive. Today, we're diving deep into ancient Philippines, 700,000 years of human presence, a story that rewrites everything we thought we knew about our beginnings. Imagine standing on the shores of an ancient island, 700,000 years ago. The air is thick with humidity. The sound of waves crashing against volcanic rocks fills your ears, and in the distance, you can hear the calls of creatures that no longer exist on this planet. The Philippines wasn't supposed to exist in human history yet. According to everything we thought we knew, this archipelago should have been empty, untouched by human hands. But recent discoveries are completely rewriting everything we thought we knew about our ancestors, about human migration, and about the very origins of exploration itself. In 2018, archaeologists working on Luzon Island made a groundbreaking discovery that would send shockwaves through the scientific community and force us to reconsider the entire timeline of human history in Southeast Asia. Deep in the Cagayan Valley, in the northern part of Luzon, they unearthed something extraordinary: butchered rhinoceros bones and dozens of precisely crafted stone tools dating back an astounding 700,000 years. This wasn't just another archaeological find. This single discovery pushed back the earliest evidence of human occupation in the Philippines by more than 600,000 years, completely shattering previous estimates and understanding. Let that sink in for a moment. 700,000 years ago, when much of the world was still in the grip of the Pleistocene epoch, when ice sheets covered vast portions of the northern continents, ancient humans were already here in the Philippines, not just surviving, but thriving in these tropical islands. The discovery was made at the Kalinga archaeological site in the Cagayan Valley. This region has been a focus of archaeological research for decades, but nothing prepared researchers for what they would find. The site contained a nearly complete rhinoceros skeleton, specifically a species called Rhinoceros philippinensis, an extinct species that once roamed the islands. But this wasn't just a fossil. The bones told a story of human activity. The discovery site itself tells an incredible story. The butchered rhinoceros skeleton wasn't just lying there as a fossil that died naturally. The bones showed clear, unmistakable cut marks from stone tools. These weren't random scratches or natural damage from geological processes or animal scavenging. These were deliberate, purposeful cuts made by someone who knew exactly what they were doing, someone who understood anatomy, who knew how to process a large animal, who had the tools and the knowledge to turn this massive creature into food and resources. The cut marks on the bones were analyzed extensively by multiple researchers using different methods. Microscopic analysis revealed the characteristic V-shaped grooves that stone tools leave when cutting through bone. These marks are distinctly different from the U-shaped grooves that carnivore teeth create, or the random scratches that can occur from geological processes. The pattern and location of the marks indicates systematic butchering, with cuts placed precisely where they would be most effective for removing meat and breaking down the carcass. Their story stretches far beyond what our textbooks ever told us, from the first stone tools to ancient trade that connected islands long before maps existed. If you're amazed by our ancestors' ancient Philippines, 700,000 years of human presence, hit that like button, Drop a comment about your favorite fact and subscribe to join the HISTOPH family. Some bones showed percussion marks where they had been struck with stones to break them open and access the marrow inside. Bone marrow is extremely nutritious, rich in fats and calories, and ancient humans across the world regularly broke open bones to extract this valuable food source. The presence of these percussion marks, combined with the cut marks, leaves no doubt that humans were actively processing this animal for food. Alongside the rhino remains, archaeologists found 57 stone tools at the site. These weren't crude rocks, picked up and used, once then discarded. These were carefully crafted implements, shaped and refined for specific purposes. The collection included different types of tools. Some were flakes with sharp edges suitable for cutting meat. Others were core tools that could be used for heavier work, like breaking bones. And some showed evidence of being used for scraping hides or other materials. The variety and sophistication of these tools tell us that the ancient humans who made them had a deep understanding of stone tool technology, what archaeologists call lithic technology. They understood how different types of stone fracture, how to strike a stone at the right angle to produce sharp flakes, and how to further refine those flakes into effective tools. This knowledge is not instinctive. It must be learned and passed down through generations. The types of stone used for the tools also provide information. The tools were made from locally available materials, showing that these ancient humans understood their environment and knew where to find suitable stone for tool making. They had knowledge of the landscape and the resources it provided. But here's where the story becomes not just interesting, but genuinely mysterious and mind-bending. The Philippines is an archipelago, a chain of over 7,000 islands surrounded by some of the deepest ocean waters in the world. These weren't shallow seas that you could wade across during ice ages when sea levels dropped significantly, even at the peak of glaciation, when enormous amounts of water were locked up in ice sheets and global sea levels were approximately 120 meters lower than today. The Philippines remained separated from mainland Asia by deep ocean trenches and significant water barriers. This is one of the most puzzling aspects of the discovery. The Philippines has never been connected to the Asian mainland by land bridges, not even during the ice ages when sea levels were at their lowest. The water barriers surrounding the islands are simply too deep. The Luzon Strait, which separates the Philippines from Taiwan, is over 250 kilometers wide at its narrowest point and includes the Manila Trench, which reaches depths of over 5,000 meters. Even more challenging, the waters between the Philippine Islands and the Asian mainland include some of the deepest ocean trenches in the world. The Philippine Trench, on the eastern side of the archipelago, reaches depths of over 10,000 meters. The surrounding seas are not shallow continental shelf waters that would have been exposed during lower sea levels. These are deep ocean basins that remained formidable barriers regardless of glacial cycles. So the million-dollar question that has puzzled scientists since the discovery is, how did they get here? This isn't a trivial problem. For decades, the dominant scientific understanding of early human migration emphasized land routes. The prevailing theory was that early human species, particularly Homo erectus, who lived during this time period, moved slowly from Africa through the Middle East into Asia and eventually reaching other parts of the world by following land corridors. Water was seen as a major barrier that ancient humans generally avoided. The accepted model suggested that ancient humans didn't have the cognitive capacity or technological sophistication to intentionally build watercraft or navigate open ocean. They were thought to be capable of wading across shallow rivers, or perhaps using natural rafts like logs to cross small water gaps, but deliberate sea crossings were believed to be beyond their capabilities. The stone tools and butchered bones discovered on Luzon completely overturn that assumption. These ancient humans didn't stumble onto the Philippines by accident. The distance and depth of water involved make accidental arrival virtually impossible. They couldn't have drifted here on logs or natural rafts swept out to sea because the currents, distances, and ocean conditions make such a scenario extremely improbable. These people had to have deliberately chosen to cross open water, which means they must have had some form of watercraft and the knowledge to use it. If you're still here, you're one of the rare few who truly care about the real origins of ancient Philippines. 700,000 years of human presence, not just the visuals, but the truth behind them. Think about what this actually means in practical terms. To successfully cross open oceans 700,000 years ago would have required multiple sophisticated capabilities that we didn't think existed at that time. First, they needed to build some form of boat or raft that could carry multiple people and remain stable in open water. This isn't simple technology, even at the most basic level. Even rudimentary rafts require binding materials, an understanding of buoyancy and weight distribution, and knowledge of which materials work best in water. Bamboo, which is abundant in Southeast Asia, could have been used for raft construction. Bamboo is naturally buoyant due to air pockets in its hollow stems, strong relative to its weight, and can be lashed together using plant fibers. However, creating a bamboo raft stable enough for open ocean crossing still requires considerable knowledge and skill. You need to select the right size and type of bamboo, bind it securely, and understand how to distribute weight to maintain stability. Second, they needed navigation skills. You can't just point a raft at the horizon and hope for the best, especially when crossing distances of potentially hundreds of kilometers. They would have needed to understand currents and how they change with seasons, wind patterns, and weather conditions, and possibly celestial navigation using the sun and stars. They would have needed to know that land existed on the other side of that water, which suggests either previous exploratory voyages or at least that to see distant land masses and decide to attempt the crossing. From Taiwan, the northern Philippines might be visible on extremely clear days, though the distance is considerable. From some points in Borneo or other parts of island Southeast Asia, other Philippine islands might be visible. The ability to see distant land across water could have motivated crossing attempts, but it still requires tremendous courage and determination to attempt such a journey with primitive technology. Third, they needed social organization and communication. Building watercraft isn't a solo activity, even at the most basic level. It requires cooperation, planning, and the ability to convey complex ideas to coordinate efforts. Multiple people need to work together to gather materials, construct the craft, and then crew it during the crossing. This level of social sophistication was supposedly beyond early human species like Homo erectus. Yet here we have clear evidence that it existed. The stone tools discovered tell us even more about these ancient inhabitants. They weren't primitive savages, barely scraping by at the edge of survival. The bones show clear evidence of systematic butchering techniques, sophisticated tool use, and organized hunting or scavenging strategies. These ancient humans knew what they were doing. They had accumulated knowledge, passed down through generations, about how to process large animals efficiently and make the most of every part of the kill. The rhinoceros they butchered wasn't a small animal. Rhinoceros philippinensis was a large species, and adult individuals could weigh well over a ton, possibly approaching 2 tons or more, based on comparisons with related species. Successfully processing an animal of that size requires coordination, planning, and specialized tools. This wasn't opportunistic scavenging of a natural death. The systematic nature of the butchering suggests active processing by a group of individuals who worked together toward a common goal. Whether they hunted this rhino or found it recently dead and scavenged it is impossible to determine from the evidence. Either way, they had to process it relatively quickly before the meat spoiled, which requires organization and efficiency. Multiple people would have worked together to butcher the animal, using different tools for different tasks. Some would cut meat from bones, others would break bones for marrow, others might have been preparing and carrying away meat and other useful materials. Now, here's another fascinating detail that makes this discovery even more significant. This wasn't Homo sapiens. Modern humans, our direct ancestors, didn't appear until approximately 300,000 years ago in Africa, with the earliest fossils of anatomically modern humans dating to around that time. The ancient humans living in the Philippines 700,000 years ago were a different species entirely. Based on the time period and location, these were almost certainly Homo erectus, our evolutionary cousins who were far more capable, intelligent, and adventurous than we ever gave them credit for. Homo erectus first appeared in Africa around 2 million years ago and was the first human species to migrate widely across the Old World. Homo erectus fossils have been found throughout Africa, Asia, and even parts of Europe, making them one of the most successful and widespread human species ever. Homo erectus has long been recognized as the first human species to leave Africa and spread across Asia and beyond. They were capable tool makers, users of fire, and successful hunters, but most theories suggested they moved slowly and deliberately, following land routes, adapting gradually to new environments over hundreds of thousands of years. They were thought to be intelligent and capable within certain limits, but not capable of the kind of abstract thinking and future planning required for intentional sea crossings. The Philippine discovery suggests something much more dramatic and impressive. It suggests that Homo erectus wasn't just wandering gradually across continents, following game animals and favorable climates. They were actively exploring, making conscious decisions to cross dangerous waters, to reach new lands that they could see in the distance, or perhaps had heard about, and successfully establishing populations in challenging island environments. This challenges everything we thought we knew about early human cognitive abilities. For years, scientists have debated when humans developed the capacity for abstract thinking, future planning, symbolic thought, and complex problem solving. The prevailing view was that these sophisticated cognitive abilities emerged relatively recently in human evolution, perhaps only with modern Homo sapiens, or possibly with late Neanderthals, who showed evidence of symbolic behavior like burial of the dead, with grave goods and creation of ornamental objects. But if Homo erectus could plan and execute sea crossings to reach distant islands 700,000 years ago, then clearly they possessed cognitive abilities far more advanced than we previously believed. They could plan for the future, imagining a journey that would take hours or even days. They could work together in coordinated groups toward a shared goal. They could communicate complex ideas about how to build watercraft and navigate across water. They could pass knowledge down through generations, maintaining cultural information about tool-making, hunting strategies, and presumably watercraft construction. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond the Philippines. If Homo erectus could reach the Philippines 700,000 years ago by crossing significant water barriers, what other islands might they have reached? What other ocean crossings might they have accomplished? How many other archaeological sites might be waiting to be discovered? Sites that will continue to push back our understanding of when and how humans spread across the planet and what they were capable of. The discovery also raises questions about other ancient hominin species and their capabilities. Homo floresiensis, the so-called hobbit, discovered on the Indonesian island of Flores, lived much more recently, around 100,000 to 60,000 years ago. But Flores is also an island that has never been connected to mainland Asia. How did Homo floresiensis ancestors get there? The standard assumption has been that they arrived by accident, perhaps swept out to sea on natural rafts during storms or tsunamis. But the Philippine discovery suggests another possibility. Perhaps ancient hominins were more capable of intentional water crossings than we thought. Perhaps the arrival of hominins on various Southeast Asian islands wasn't a series of lucky accidents, but rather evidence of deliberate exploration by species we've underestimated. Consider also what this means for the story of human exploration and migration more broadly. We often think of the Great Age of Exploration as beginning with Polynesian navigators who settled remote Pacific islands, or European sailors who crossed oceans to reach new continents. These achievements were indeed remarkable and deserve recognition. But the truth is, the Age of Exploration began hundreds of thousands of years earlier, with ancient humans who looked at a distant horizon across dangerous waters and decided to see what lay beyond. These weren't random acts of desperation by people fleeing disaster or famine. While we can't know their specific motivations, the evidence suggests deliberate choices made by intelligent, capable people who had the knowledge, skills, and courage to venture into the unknown. They didn't have modern technology, advanced materials, detailed maps, or any of the tools we consider essential for ocean travel. They had stone tools, their own ingenuity, and an apparently unstoppable drive to explore. The Philippines, in this context, becomes more than just an archaeological site revealing ancient human presence. It becomes a symbol of human capability, determination, and the ancient urge to explore that has driven our species and our hominin ancestors since very early in our evolutionary history. Those ancient humans who first set foot on Philippine shores 700,000 years ago weren't just migrating in search of food or resources. They were pioneers explorers, and adventurers who expanded the boundaries of the known world for their species. Every stone tool carefully excavated from the Cagayan Valley, every cut mark on ancient rhino bones, every piece of evidence painstakingly studied by archaeologists tells the same powerful story. Our ancestors, or more accurately, our evolutionary cousins, were more advanced, more adventurous, more intelligent, and more capable than history books ever taught us, or than scientists believed until very recently. They weren't primitive brutes stumbling through a hostile world, driven only by immediate needs. They were thinking, planning, exploring beings who shaped their environment and conquered some of the most challenging geographical barriers on Earth. The discovery also raises important questions about what we still don't know. If the earliest evidence we've found is 700,000 years old, how much earlier might humans have actually arrived in the Philippines? Archaeological evidence is rare and difficult to preserve, especially over such vast time periods. Organic materials decay completely, leaving no trace. Even stone and bone are subject to erosion, burial, and destruction by geological processes. The fact that we found evidence from 700,000 years ago is somewhat miraculous, and it certainly doesn't mean that was the first arrival. It simply means that's the earliest evidence that survived long enough for us to discover it. How many other sites remain undiscovered, buried beneath meters of volcanic ash or sediment, underwater due to rising sea levels since the Ice Age, or destroyed completely by tectonic activity? The Philippines sits on the Ring of Fire, one of the most geologically active regions on Earth. Volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and other geological processes have constantly reshaped the landscape over the past 700,000 years. How much archaeological evidence has been buried or destroyed? How many times did ancient humans attempt ocean crossings to reach the Philippines? The discovery of one successful population tells us nothing about how many attempts might have been made, how many succeeded and established viable populations, how many succeeded in reaching land but then died out for various reasons, how many failed entirely, with rafts swept away by currents or sunk in storms, leaving no trace. Were there earlier migrations that left no trace? We've yet discovered. Populations that arrived but didn't survive long-term, or whose archaeological traces were destroyed. Sites that existed but are now completely gone, erased by geological processes or submerged beneath rising seas. The mystery of how exactly they crossed those waters remains unsolved. We can hypothesize about rafts made from bamboo, which is abundant in the region and naturally buoyant. We can imagine simple raft designs that would have provided basic flotation. We can theorize about navigation techniques based on visible landmarks, ocean currents, or bird behavior. But the truth is, we don't know for certain. The watercraft they used, if any physical evidence ever existed, has long since rotted away completely, leaving absolutely no trace after 700,000 years of decay. Organic materials like wood, bamboo, and plant fibers simply don't survive that long under normal conditions. They're broken down by bacteria, fungi, and chemical processes. Even under ideal preservation conditions, like extremely dry caves or waterlogged anaerobic environments, organic materials rarely survive more than a few thousand years at most. The chance of any direct evidence of 700,000-year-old watercraft surviving to the present day is essentially zero. What we do know with certainty is that they succeeded. Against incredible odds, using technology we can barely imagine and can't directly observe, they crossed open ocean and established themselves on these islands. They hunted or scavenged large game. They made sophisticated stone tools. They survived and presumably thrived, at least for some period of time, and they began a human presence in the Philippines that would eventually continue for hundreds of thousands of years, though not necessarily continuously by the same population. This story should fundamentally change how we think about human evolution and the capabilities of ancient human species. For too long, the narrative of human development focused on a progressive model where earlier species were more primitive and less capable, with capabilities steadily increasing through time until reaching modern humans who possess the full range of human cognitive abilities. This linear progressive model suggested that advanced behaviors like planning, symbolic thought, and complex technology only emerged relatively recently. The Philippine discovery, along with other recent archaeological findings from around the world, proves that this simple progressive model is wrong. Homo erectus, living 700,000 years ago, was capable of behaviors we thought only modern humans could accomplish. They could plan complex activities, build watercraft, navigate across water, and colonize new environments. These are sophisticated behaviors requiring advanced cognitive abilities. This doesn't mean Homo erectus was identical to modern humans in cognitive capacity. There were surely differences in capabilities between species, but the gap was apparently much smaller than we thought, and the timeline for when various capabilities emerged needs to be drastically revised based on mounting evidence. For too long, the narrative of human development focused primarily on Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, treating Asia and the Pacific as peripheral regions reached late in human history and contributing little to human evolution. This Eurocentric bias affected how evidence was interpreted and which regions received archaeological attention and funding. The Philippine discovery proves that this narrative is false. Southeast Asia and the Pacific weren't peripheral regions that ancient humans reached late and contributed little to human evolution. They were central to human history from very early times, presenting unique challenges that drove innovation and adaptation, and hosting populations that were pioneers in maritime technology and island colonization. The ancient humans who reached the Philippines 700,000 years ago weren't following in anyone's footsteps or replicating accomplishments from elsewhere. They were the pioneers, the first explorers, the original seafarers, who proved it was possible for their species to cross open ocean and establish new populations in distant lands. Everything that came after, all the later migrations by Homo sapiens to remote Pacific islands, all the great maritime civilizations, all of human achievements in ocean navigation, built on foundations potentially laid by these far earlier pioneers who first demonstrated that water wasn't an absolute barrier to human expansion. So the next time you think about human history and human evolution, remember those ancient people on the shores of Luzon 700,000 years ago. Remember the butchered rhino bones and carefully crafted stone tools that are the only traces they left behind. Remember that human courage, ingenuity, and determination aren't modern inventions or uniquely human traits. They're ancient characteristics present in our evolutionary cousins, hardwired into our lineage, passed down through countless generations from ancestors and related species who dared to explore the unknown. The Philippines isn't just 700,000 years old in human terms. It's a testament to the courage, ingenuity, and unstoppable drive to explore that characterized ancient human species. It's proof that we've always been explorers, always been innovators, always been capable of far more than we imagine, going back far deeper in time than anyone previously believed possible. And here's perhaps the most exciting part of this entire discovery. We're probably still just scratching the surface. Every year brings new discoveries, new sites, new evidence that continues to push back timelines and expand our understanding of what ancient humans were capable of. What other secrets are still buried beneath the islands of the Philippines, waiting to be discovered? What other incredible stories of ancient human achievement are waiting to rewrite history once again? The answer is out there, buried in the earth, preserved in stone and bone, waiting for the next generation of archaeologists to uncover. And when they do, we'll probably be shocked all over again at just how capable, how intelligent, and how adventurous our ancient ancestors and their evolutionary relatives truly were. The story of human evolution and migration is far more complex, far more impressive, and far more interesting than we ever imagined. Our ancestors' stories don't end here. They're just waiting to be rediscovered. Smash that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to join the Histo PH family for the next epic chapter of our forgotten.